A good horror film has to stick the landing, but some finales have left audiences truly divided. From unexpected twists to groan-worthy cop-outs, these scary movies end in seriously controversial ways. Just beware, spoilers ahead. Widely considered one of the greatest horror films of all time, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho marks one of the earliest forays into the slasher genre. It's a stylish masterpiece, complete with masterful acting, a chilling score, and the most famous shower scene in cinema history. It's almost perfect, apart from an odd conclusion that puts a damper on the creepy factor. The climax of Psycho is so famous that it's not much of a twist anymore, but audiences were shocked and appalled when the movie first hit theaters. Norman Bates' mother has been dead all along, and it's Norman himself who has been committing the murders at the family motel. His fractured psyche has made him switch between his own personality and that of his mother. The famous final shot depicts Norman looking at the camera with a devilish grin. Unfortunately, the preceding 10 minutes undermine this chilling final frame, as a psychiatrist explains to the still-living characters how the melding of Norman and his mother came to pass.
He was never all Norman, but he was often only Mother.
While Psycho remains a beloved film, the ending doesn't sit right with moviegoers looking for something a little more subtle. Anthony Perkins' performance is incredible to this day, and his terrifying expressions provide all the context viewers could possibly need. It's not controversial to call Stanley Kubrick's The Shining the best Stephen King adaptation ever made. Between Kubrick's trippy visuals and the performances of Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall, there's simply so much to love. Many viewers enjoy the movie's ending, which concludes the story on a mysterious note. Danny and Wendy escape the Overlook Hotel on a snowcat, although their ultimate fate remains unknown. Jack kills the Overlook's chef, Dick Halloran, before freezing to death outside. In the final shot, Jack is visible in a photo of the Overlook from 1921, indicating that he is now forever a part of the hotel's history. The most outspoken critic of the film, Stephen King himself. He famously hates Kubrick's characterization of both Jack and Wendy, and the movie's ending exemplifies the differences between the two versions. In King's book, the Overlook blows up, and Wendy, Danny, and Halloran flee to Florida. In the film, the hotel and Jack freeze, while Wendy and Danny drive off through the storm. King maintains that the film has no heart, as indicated by this distinction between warmth and coldness. Others contend that killing Halloran was a troubling choice that ties into the trope of black characters always being killed in horror movies. However, we do get to see Halloran again in Dr. Sleep, which serves as a King-approved adaptation of the book. If you're a fan of The Shining, you might find yourself disagreeing with the author about this one. Although he brings plenty of other creative elements to the table, M. Night Shyamalan remains best known for his twist endings. Because of his penchant for third-act surprises, some of which feel more reasonable and earned than others, Shyamalan's films often spark heated debates. His 2002 film Signs is definitely one of his most polarizing features, and it's either an underrated parable about faith in the end of the world or an alien movie without much bite, depending on who you ask. Signs follows Graham Hess, a former minister living on a farm in Pennsylvania with his kids and brother Merrill. Still grieving the loss of his wife in a car accident, Graham and his family find themselves having to contend with an inexplicable alien invasion. When Graham recalls his wife's final words of encouragement, Merrill defeats the aliens with a baseball bat and a glass of water. Graham's faith is restored and the family survives. But hold up, were those aliens seriously allergic to water? Yes, it's good old H2O that saves the day, and whether it has religious significance or it's just a deus ex machina, some people weren't thrilled to see it burn the aliens like acid. Regardless, Signs is a solid sci-fi thriller with some truly terrifying moments.
What's the matter?
There's a monster outside my room. Can I have a glass of water?
Even if it hasn't achieved the same staying power as The Ring or The Grudge, The Descent is one of the best horror films of the 2000s. Directed by British filmmaker Neil Marshall, the story follows several women who go splunking in the caves of North Carolina, a year after one of them lost her husband and daughter in a terrible accident. If the claustrophobic ambiance of the caves isn't enough, the women also encounter mole-like humanoids that feed on human flesh. Everyone but Sarah dies in the caves, depending on which ending you see, that is. In the original UK version, Sarah escapes the cave and makes it to the road where she hallucinates her traitorous friend Juno. The next scene reveals that Sarah never left the cave at all, and she's still down there hallucinating her dead daughter as the creatures close in. Lionsgate, the film's American distributor, considered that ending too depressing, so the US cut depicts Sarah escaping without that final twist. Some fans find the final jump scare of Juno unnecessary, though it certainly delivers one last fright. Marshall told Vulture that he doesn't consider the US version much of a happy ending at all, because Sarah has completely lost her sanity. If there's anything anyone remembers about The Mist, Frank Darabont's third Stephen King adaptation, it's that absolute sledgehammer of an ending. Set in small-town Maine, the film centers on artist David Drayton and his son Billy as they become trapped in a grocery store surrounded by a mysterious mist. Naturally, the weather isn't the scary part. It's the violent monsters lurking within. In the final moments of the mist, David and a few of his fellow survivors escape the grocery store by car and drive until they run out of gas. With the mist surrounding them and the monsters approaching, they decide to take their own lives rather than become monster food. David shoots everyone in the car, including his son, but there are no bullets left for him. In an awful twist, just as David soaks in the horror of what he's done, the mist clears and rescue arrives. The movie's ending marks a huge departure from the book, which describes David and the gang trapped in the mist with their future uncertain. But unlike the altered ending of The Shining, King considered it an improvement compared to his written version. When The Mist premiered in 2007, audiences were not too keen on the grim finale. The critical consensus of the film has improved over the years though, with viewers coming to appreciate its no-holds-barred approach. As Frank Darabont put it, "We need movies that dare to piss people off."
We gave it a good shot. Nobody can say we didn't.
Changing a book's ending for a film adaptation always courts controversy, but that doesn't just apply when Stephen King is involved. When Richard Matheson's apocalyptic novel I Am Legend was adapted into a film of the same name and had its final moments altered, audiences weren't all that impressed whether they'd read the book or not. I Am Legend follows Will Smith as Dr. Robert Neville, an army virologist who lives in a zombie-infested New York with his beloved German Shepherd. After 2 hours of undead chaos, the film ends with Dr. Neville creating a cure for the zombie virus, passing it along to 2 other survivors, and sacrificing himself so the others can escape. What viewers saw in theaters was not the original ending though. The intended conclusion shows Neville having an epiphany about his actions as he realizes he's the monster in the eyes of the zombies. He stops experimenting on the Darkseekers and leaves the cure behind as he flees with his 2 companions. That initially tested poorly with audiences, giving us the ending audiences know today. There's no consensus on which ending is truly better, but only one of them is apparently canon, and it's not the one you'd expect. The upcoming I Am Legend 2 will ignore the final ending of the first film and instead follow the alternate one. Even though it was advertised as the follow-up to a found-footage kaiju film, many people who sat down to watch 10 Cloverfield Lane were expecting stars Mary Elizabeth Winstead, John Goodman, and John Gallagher Jr. to remain grounded in reality. This ended up being the case, until the last 10 minutes or so. After Michelle gets into a car crash, she awakens inside the underground bunker of Doomsday Prepper Howard. He says there's been some kind of attack, from either aliens or Russians, and no one can get in or out without exposing everyone inside to the poisoned air. Of course, Howard is far from a benevolent leader. Thanks to her fellow captive Emmett, Michelle is able to escape Howard's shelter and reach the surface once again. The air apparently isn't contaminated, making her think that the old man may have just been lying. But then the aliens show up.
Come on.
With just moments to spare, 10 Cloverfield Lane goes truly off the rails as Michelle tries to save her own skin. And in the final shot, the future of humanity. Love it or hate it, this polarizing ending got plenty of people talking. Marketing gimmicks might help attract audiences to a movie, but people typically expect any advertising to end once the opening credits have started to roll. That wasn't the case with The Devil Inside, which had horror fans everywhere groaning thanks to a single line of text. This found footage film follows Isabella Rossi, a young woman trying to expose the truth about demonic possession. She travels to Italy with documentarian Michael Schaefer, Father Ben Rawlings, and Father David Keane to find answers about her mother Maria, who murdered 3 people during an exorcism years prior. Maria's possession spreads, first to Father Keane, then to Isabella, and then to Michael. Father Keane kills himself, and Michael gets into a car accident, leaving a still-possessed Isabella free to get up to demonic mayhem. And then what happens? There's a black screen with the words, "For more information about the ongoing investigation, visit www.therossifiles.com." Needless to say, most people who paid good money for a seat in front of the big screen were a little annoyed to learn that they'd have to watch the rest of the film at home. Anyone watching The Devil Inside nowadays couldn't get the full experience even if they wanted to, as the website has since been taken down. It's become a running gag that Stephen King books rarely provide satisfying endings. So, when you consider how good his beginnings and middles often are, they can be beyond disappointing. Some King movie adaptations improve on their original endings, but others fail to do so. Andy Muschietti's It Chapter 2 tackles the adult sections of King's book, but it doesn't exactly stick the landing. The sequel takes place 27 years after the first film and follows the grown-up members of the Losers Club as they come together one last time to defeat Pennywise. In the novel, Pennywise turns into a giant spider and is killed by Bill after the man literally crushes the monster's heart. That was a bit too literal for some people's taste. But Muschietti's ending didn't end up any better. In the film, Pennywise remains in clown form, and when the friends descend into the sewers one last time, they defeat him by bullying him to death. That's right, they tease Pennywise until he shrivels up and dies right in front of them. You'd be hard-pressed to find any staunch defenders of this unceremonious climax. For another example of Stephen King's shaky finales, look no further than Gerald's Game and its 2017 film adaptation. Mike Flanagan's take on the story catches up with Jessie and her husband Gerald as they go on a romantic getaway. When Gerald dies of a heart attack during a kinky moment gone wrong, Jessie remains handcuffed to the bed. Trapped in place, Jessie's mental and physical state deteriorates, and she begins hallucinating her dead husband and having flashbacks of her traumatic childhood. A strange figure known as the Moonlight Man visits Jessie in the night, but she's not sure if he's actually real. Jessie eventually escapes, and in the film's epilogue, we learn of her fate. She reckons with the abuse she experienced as a child and starts a foundation for fellow victims. She then goes to the trial of the very real Moonlight Man and proves that he no longer has power over her. Many King fans take issue with the 50-page-long epilogue in the book, and the film's ending proved similarly contentious. Flanagan was well aware of the critical divide over the epilogue, but felt strongly about including it. He told Bloody Disgusting in 2017, "I fully expect that the epilogue is going to be the lightning rod.